So here's our first example, and I'm going to put like 1,000 stars on this, really just 3, because this is what I call my warm and fuzzy question. And what this means is I always start every test with a question where I have literally told you what the question is going to look like. I've told you exactly what type of question it's going to be, how it's going to work, because I want you to go into that test gaining some confidence, right? So this is the first question of your exam. It will be a different set of numbers, right? A different data set. We'll be talking about something other than case prices of wine, but it will look exactly like this. It will be asking you to construct a modified box plot. So the first piece of this is going to be having you find the 5-number summary. So this is where it requires that you remember that the 5-number summary are those 5 numbers that are included in the box plot, those 5 values that divide our data into quarters, or the last 5 numbers that you're going to get in your calculation when you do 1-bar stats. So just to remind you, this is min, Q1, the median, Q3, and our maximum value. Now, if you're doing this by hand, you got to reorder this. If you're doing it in the calculator, it really doesn't matter. You can go ahead and just enter this willy-nilly. The calculator will sort it when it finds everything. So I'm going to do this both ways. I'm going to do this first by hand, and then I'll just do it in the calculator to verify. But by hand, I would have to order all this up again. So 67, 90, oh God, 122 it looks like, 127, 128, 128. This, I know, I'm sorry. I feel bad every time I do this riveting stuff, but then I also feel like there's the people who are trying to follow along. If I don't painstakingly do this crap by hand, it's going to be a pain in the ass to fill out your notes. So we're almost done. 142, 150. And then I'm just going to count up how many things we're dealing with. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So if I wanted to do that position formula, 13 plus 1 over 2. I need the 7th thing for my median. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's my median. The min and the max. In terms of points for this is usually a 4-point question. And most of the points are for the Q1, Q3, median, and then min and max, I'm going to assume you get right. If you get them wrong, you're losing points. But so sometimes it's a 3-point problem where it's just those 3 pieces, and then your min and max can bite you if you don't have them. Because those are easy. The minimum is 67. The max is a 150. And then remember, Q1 and Q3 by hand, we're looking at the lower half and the upper half. There's 6 on either half. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to, end up right between the 3rd and 4th of each half. So we could average those. The average of 140 and 140 is 140. That's easy enough. The 122 and 127, I'd have to go figure that out. Looks like it's 124.25, I think, yeah. Feel good about that. And now I've got my 5-number summary. I've nailed those 5 points of the exam. So again, if you want to, you could do this in the calculator. Feel free to skip past this if you don't want to see it. So I saved you the pain of watching me enter this in my calculator, but I went ahead and entered it in this weird disordered fashion that it was given to us in. Though I feel like I have a typo because now I have a 127 when there's no 127. Oh my God. I don't know what I've done. Let me just go through this. I actually knew I was making mistakes earlier. 150, 135, 90, 122 is right, 127 is wrong, 128, 67, 142. Oh, I'm missing 140. I knew I was missing one. I'll enter that. So 140. Found it. I was missing it, and then I put in the wrong one. Okay. So I hope it's all right. We'll find out because I've done this by hand, so we'll know if it's wrong. Once it's in, stat, calculate, 1-bar stats, bust this out, scroll on down. 67, 124.5, 129, 40, and 150. Hooray! We got the same answers. Cool. So now we can compute the IQR. IQR. All right. The IQR is just Q3 minus Q1. This is normally not something I actually put on the exam because you have to do that for the next step anyways. So this is not something you get points on for the exam. So 140 minus 124.5 is 15.5. Now, calculating the fences and determining if there are any outliers. This is usually 4 points on the exam. First thing we gotta do is deal with the actual calculations. One thing to do to make sure you get full points is write down the formulas you're using, because sometimes weird stuff happens when you go to plug in, and if you write down the formulas, I know that you at least knew that part. So the lower fence is going to start at the lower quartile. The upper fence is going to start at the upper quartile. For the lower fence, you're going to go below, and for the upper fence, we're going to go above, just like we did visually. And then the amount that we're going to go above and below is going to be 1.5 times that IQR. So that's the same for both of them. The only thing that changes is which quartile we're starting with and whether we're going up or down. Now, this is something you could have on your note card so you're not sitting there trying to memorize anything. You could just write this down and then go grab that formula. All right, so Q1. This is the most common mistake, is students just grab the wrong piece. Q3, 140. Above, below. I said those in the backwards, but you get it. 1.5 times that 15.5. 1.5 times that 15.5. If you want, you could go ahead and calculate that piece first. Don't do that. I just type it all into my calculator as is and let the calculator handle the order of operations. Minus 1.5 times 15.5. 101.25. I'll use green. And then I'd redo the same thing. If I really want to, I can bring back what I last typed by doing second enter. And then I can just change this stuff out. 140, delete, delete, plus 163.25. So this is part of the question. A lot of students also stop here thinking they're done. But this is the other piece. I want you to tell me if anything is an outlier. So really, one way to think of this is nothing should be below the upper fence. Nothing should be above the upper. Did I say that right? Nothing should be below the lower fence. Nothing should be above the upper fence. I like to visualize this on my data. So what I would do is if I have the whole data set or if I have the 5-number summary, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw in my fences. Right? Ooh, I lost something. I lost 127. And by drawing my fences, I mean at 101 is right here between 90 and 122. Or on our 5-number summary, for those of us who didn't reorder this data by hand, between 67 and 124. Whereas 163, well, that's somewhere above 150, right? Somewhere north of 150 or somewhere above 150. So what should happen is that all of our data should fall between these fences that we made. Any data that falls outside that fence is a bad sheep, right? It's off the reservation. And you get to see my second animal that I have drawn out of numbers. Now in this case, we need to figure out every sheep that's bad. So if you had just the 5-number summary, you have to look back up at your data and recognize, oh crap, 90 is also less than this fence of 101.25. So 90 is also a bad sheep, right? He's also off the reservation. So we've got 2 bad sheep on that side, no bad sheep on this side. So we would write here 67 and 90 are outliers. That's our summary from this. So if this is a test question, I'm looking for both those values to be correct and then your conclusion to be correct as well. Now we're ready to construct our box plot. I like to do the box plot in 3 pieces. To start with my box, then do my outliers, and then deal with the whiskers themselves, because the whiskers are where everybody makes the mistakes. So the box, remember, is the middle 3, right? It's our IQR. It's that middle, or the middle 50%. This will never change. The outliers should not have any impact because we went above and below the edges of that box. So this should always be the same. So we've got 124. I like to label them. So that way if I'm off, people know what I was trying to go for. I like to tell people what they were as well. Median, running out of room, 129. And then my Q3 is all the way over here. I'm in the middle of my writing. Oops. 140. This is terrible. I'm slightly off, but that's why I'm labeling the bottom so that way someone's like, oh yeah, that doesn't look like it's fine. And now we want to do, so we just finished the box portion, we want to do the outliers. We said 67 and 90 are outliers. So we're going to come in about midway through the box and put an open circle at 67 and an open circle at 90. So those are our outliers. They're now marked. Now the last piece are the whiskers. The whiskers normally, typically, in a traditional box plot go to the min and the max, which is fine on this side because our maximum, 150, and I could label these 67 and 90. Our maximum of 150 has no issues. Now here's the piece that students get incorrect. On this other side, we do not want to go to the fence. We do not want to go to this value. Our whiskers should never cross our fences. What we want to do is we want to go back up to our data and we want to find the first good sheep. The first sheep that's still on the farm, right? That's the sheep that we're going to go to. We call this our adjacent value. So 122, I'm going to make a note here at the bottom. Go to the next good value. And we call this the adjacent value. All right. If you want to put your fences on your box plot, you can, but they're not part of the box plot. The box plot only represents data. I would not mark you off though. If you want to visualize it, we had a fence at 101 and a fence at 163. What you should see is that your entire box portion should be contained inside of those fences. Anything outside those fences, the only thing that should cross are your outliers marked as little open circles. So as a very, very, very long example, but this is what we're going to do on the worksheet on next week. This is going to be your first question on the exam. So please, 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 please practice the crap out of this. Make sure you feel comfortable with it because nothing makes me sadder than seeing that first page and having a student have this blank or wrong.